next we're going to be talking about driving performance through purpose. There's a nice alliteration for you. And please welcome Melanie Johnson, CMO of the Princess Margaret Cancer Foundation, and Noah Vardon, President of Havas Media. And have your questions ready for Slido, brought to you by who? Who's? Neo, exactly. Noah, good to see you again. Long time no speak. It's been at least 8 hours. Great to see you. I passed by one of the building. Do you have more than one building here?
One hospital.
I passed by the hospital. It's a beautiful building.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was there this morning.
Yeah,
great. High quality place and high quality treatment. Okay, I'm going to leave it to you guys.
Amazing. Hello, everyone. Happy Pride. So we wanted to have this conversation today. I'm joined by my partner and client, my client partner, Melanie Johnson, who is highly experienced. She's been doing amazing things in her role over the last 6 months with the Princess Margaret Cancer Foundation, and also has previously led a number of agencies, including DDB, and so she has a ton of great experience. And we wanted to bring, I know there's been a lot of conversation around performance today, a little bit about as well around sort of how to sell, but I think what we wanted to do today was bring a bit of meaning to our conversation and the types of things that we think are going to lead sort of the trends in the coming, years, the next 6 months to a year, and you're going to see hopefully a lot as well when anyone that's in Cannes next week. So with that, the first question we wanted to get to, we'll just kind of get right into it, is the idea of partnership. So Melanie, I wanted to ask you, what is your definition of partnership today, and how do you think that's changed over the last sort of few years?
Yeah, I don't really think what makes an effective partnership has necessarily changed. I think kind of the core fundamentals have stayed the same. I actually just think given sort of the state of the nation today in the state of marketing, kind of those fundamentals have actually become even more important. So I think chemistry, obviously, in a partnership is really, really important. And I think in this day and age when we're all under pressure to deliver more with less and to do better than last year's results, but to do it with a smaller budget and to deliver higher ROI, I think having a partner that you feel aligned with and that you get along with is critically important. I also think in this world of always on, obviously there's been a lot of talk today about the ability to measure in real time, and because everything is so dynamic all the time now, I think communication, which has always been key, is even more important, but it's like constant seamless communication. And I think that's why, in addition to email, you see, you and I pretty much started texting each other right away, and you see like Slack channels shared between client and agency and WhatsApp chat groups, because I think just that always on communication is sort of needed right now. I think flexibility and adaptability is huge. I think if COVID taught us anything, it's like, be ready for the curveballs because they're going to come. And, you and I had we had one of our hugest fundraising events this past weekend. And because of the wildfires in Quebec and the air quality problems, we almost had to cancel it midweek. And so, it's things like that. Like you just have to be flexible, and you have to be ready to change on a moment's notice. And I think the last one is trust. Again, it's always been critical, but I think now, when you think about the weightiness of some of the issues that we're dealing with in marketing, like data privacy or responsible use of AI and things like that, like there's some pretty heavy topics. And so I think you need a partner that there's real genuine trust and confidence there, that you sort of have each other's back and you're true partners that look out for each other.
That's great. Yeah, and I think for us too, when we think about partnerships, it's not just about a media plan or, it's really the sort of the 360 ecosystem and how everything is coming together. And, I think today as a marketer and as an agency lead, you're basically rewriting the script, anytime something new comes into the world, like like issues with weather now. So it's really been an important time to, I think, just recalibrate on what partnership means. And so we really had, I think, a good start at that. So the next thing I want to talk about, so at Havas, we talk a lot about meaningful media, which I won't get into today, but I do think the broader concept of being meaningful in marketing today is something that a lot of marketers are talking about. So, it's no longer just about what you're selling, it's more about what you're doing and how you're showing up in the world. So I'm curious how Princess Margaret thinks about being meaningful, and how do you know sort of that's working in your organization?
Yeah, I mean, I think being meaningful is really all about having an emotional connection with your target and with consumers and having some sort of impact or role in their life. And I think without that emotional connection, you really are just a commodity. And there's tons of evidence out there, we've all seen it, about how much better meaningful brands are at growing and being successful than brands that don't have any meaning attached to them. So, in terms of what that means for us and how we go about it, I think that's, we really try at every consumer touch point to demonstrate the meaning and the role that our brand, that the Princess Margaret plays in people's lives. So, when we have an event like Ride to Conquer Cancer or Walk, we always open it with what we call a mission moment, which is really a patient telling the story about the impact that Princess Margaret had on their life and on the lives of their loved ones. And they're always very compelling. I think I've cried more in the first 6 months at Princess Margaret than I have in like the decade before I started working here, because they're always very emotional. So yeah, that's a big part of it.
Okay, yeah, and I agree. It's it's definitely something that we know that is affecting almost every community in Canada, particularly here in Ontario, and so the meaning sort of behind what you do is so important to our community. So I think everyone has a unique view on that, and then when it comes to our work, being able to see that through is such a special thing to be able to do as a brand. So huge congrats to that. I wanted to just a quick pivot on purpose. So one of the things that we've also talked about is how purpose drives performance, and so how a lot of brands that have a role within a consumer's life, and people are willing to get upset about it if it's not there. Because a lot of brands would go unnoticed if they disappeared today, right? So you've all seen those stats. So truly having purpose as a brand is really important. So I wanted to see for you, how do you know that you clearly have a purpose and a very strong one? So your purpose is to conquer cancer in our lifetime, and so that's pretty huge. Let's clap for that. Yeah. So how do you know that that's translating to what you're doing in your marketing activities? How do you make sense of that?
Yeah, I think obviously it is relatively easy for us to focus on our purpose. It's inherent in what we do. I think that we put a lot of effort into communicating the purpose in a way that makes everyone realize that they have a role to play in it, because it can't just be something that goes after a select few. It's a massive challenge. It's why we need a big brand campaign to get that message out there and to really, demonstrate to people that, listen, if we're going to conquer cancer, it's going to take all of us. And I think we have to walk that tightrope between being hopeful and optimistic, because there's a lot of great breakthroughs and a lot of great successes, and demonstrating that there is still a very compelling need, and you can't be too optimistic or people feel like, oh, they got it, I don't need to donate. And you can't be too negative or too dire, because then the situation just feels too big to solve. And then people think, well, what's my little donation going to do? You know, I'm not going to bother. So it is a bit of a balancing act, I would say. And in terms of how we, measure how we're doing against that, I think it's the same as anybody else, any other for-profit organization. We measure it. We set KPIs, we track, brand awareness, intent to donate, we measure social sentiment, all, kind of the same ways that any other organization would track it. That's how we do it.
That's great. Okay, we're going to take a pivot to specifically talk about digital out of home, and then almost like a bit of an inspiration session of what we're seeing from a purpose perspective. So we really believe in the role of at Havas at sort of brand and digital out of home. And so we recently, this is a campaign from last year's Cannes, where we won the Grand Prix in out of home, and obviously had a huge impact on a stigma around swimming. This is particularly on a beach in Dubai, and was for our client Adidas globally. So this is just one example, and we've got a few that we wanted to chat through, but we really feel that there's a shift, and it was great to hear this morning people talking about the role of out of home and digital out of home and branding, because it's not just about this thing is 2 kilometers away from that. We really need to move beyond that, and I feel like with programmatic, yes, there's a lot of like very data heavy things that can happen, but if you bring the emotional side to the data, as Google was talking about of like loving data, I think there's things that can actually jump out and even resonate further than the convenience of a store being a few blocks away. So I'm going to hand it over to you to talk about sort of a next campaign that really inspired us in the digital out of home space.
Yeah, we have 2 more to show that I really loved, and I kind of picked ones that were in my category. And so, I really believe every touch point matters for the brand, and nobody different. If you can't have amazing TV and then like be terrible in email or in the services that you provide, it all matters. So if we go to the next slide, I'm seeing DoorDash down here, so that's not what I'm supposed to be looking at. There we go. So this is actually quite old. It's from 2014, and it's for a charity. I believe it's called Mise Rior. Hopefully I'm not totally butchering that. But what I love about it, so it was these digital out-of-home ads for that charity, and what they did was when you swiped your credit card to donate, it actually visually demonstrated the impact that your donation was having. So one of them was a slice of sorry, I can't see what you're, oh, there we go. So this is a child in the Philippines who his, handcuffs from a labor camp are being cut. And then there was another one that was to feed children in Peru, where when you swiped your card, it cut the bread. So I just thought it was brilliant. I love that you make a donation right away. I love that, if you do it, you could sort of get that emotional hit of I'm making a difference, like right in the heat of the moment. And then obviously data capture, because you put your credit card in, and so that was used later to go back and try and convert people into becoming bigger donors.
Love that.
And then this next one is more recent. This is from Germany. The campaign is called Sexism Against Sexism, and it was in support of a petition to really uphold the laws against sexism in the workplace. And so what is on the digital billboard initially is quite a sexist phrase. I'm going to give you one of the tamer ones because some of them are actually quite extreme. But, a phrase like, you did a pretty good job for a woman. And so that phrase, over time, gets overridden or eliminated by the digital signatures of people signing the petition. And so you can see there's a QR code there and the woman's standing in front of it. So again, a high degree of engagement. You are enticed to sign the petition right then and there. and just a really great, I think, that dynamic animation, just a really creative way of visualizing how if you sign this petition, we can help eliminate sexism in the workplace. So 2 examples that I really like that show how engaging digital out of home can be.
Amazing. So yeah, so we believe in the future of digital out of home. I think there's a story to be told, and so I would just encourage everyone as they go back today to whether you're a creative team or a client team to just find inspiration. We saw great examples of that in the previous session as well. Digital out of home is back, and there's ways that we can really bring it to life through brand, and the scale that it now provides is pretty incredible. So. That concludes our session, and so we will take questions.
We're going to do one question with you folks. By the way, really well done. Thoughtful, meaningful, purpose-driven. I really congratulate not only what you folks are doing here, but what you do in your daily work. It's important.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's very important. All right, let's look. Okay. Well, I think we've talked about, we've talked a little bit about out of home and some wonderful execution, but I guess the question here is where does it fit in your media mix? Like, I don't know if you want to talk to percentage-wise or planning or how it complements or is additive to the media.
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, we actually haven't started planning for the brand campaign yet, so that is to come and that's in the works. But, listen, I think as those 2 examples showed, there is a real role for out of home to play. And I think for us and for what we do, where we really need to engage people, yes, we need very compelling, very emotional television and other channels. But I think out of home, we need people to really feel, like I said before, like they have a role to play, and we need them to engage with the Princess Margaret brand. And I think that's where something like really creative, innovative use of digital out of home comes into play.
Yeah, and I would just add to that is think about it. It can be a starting point. So the example we gave with our liquid billboard is kind of the name of the campaign. That actually started it all, and it was on obviously in a beach setting. It then translated to digital out of home. It then translated to we were having discussions around the city. Then we had out of home and social, sort of traditional. So it just really had a lot of legs. But a lot of people think of out of home as like the 3rd or 4th additive, and sometimes you can think of it as one of your leading tactics. So that's why I would suggest.
That's great. Well, Melanie and Noah, not only have you contributed much to society, to this meaningful opportunity here, meaningful partnerships, and I'm very familiar with the meaningful media from our Havas friends all over the world, and you speak it quite articulately. But in addition to your campaign that talked about phrases to women that were ill-gotten, and in your own work and pride, you're helping to fulfill our destiny of making this a much more diverse advertising industry and out-of-home industry. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. Give these folks a hand.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.